ITGSM, I'm going to talk about how Samsung can manage IT related goals as well as process goals. So the IT related goals you're going to talk about is manage IT related risk. Since Samsung is an electronic company, so they will have to deal with IT related equipment daily. So one of the organizations which I found was the Department of Public Welfare. It's actually a government organization from the Pennsylvania, and they're responsible for more than 2 million Pennsylvanians' information and their business partner information. So they have to manage their like equipment such as servers in case like breakdown. What would they do to manage the risk? So how do DBW manage the IT risk? They actually implemented a framework tailored to their own needs, and this framework actually allowed DBW to identify appropriate risk response strategy as well as to allow DBW to conduct risk assessment on the IT assets and processes. Furthermore, they also implemented a automated risk management platform. So this basically streamline all the different processes into a single platform. So it reduce the manual work of maintaining the different process risk framework. Since now all the processes are in the same platform, the risk framework will be on the same platform as well. And to develop risk profile and the most importantly to perform a continuous risk assessment. So for my proposal to Samsung, I will actually advise them to adopt a framework similar to DBW, but instead of their own tailored one, I will propose the ISACA Risk IT framework. So basically, why I recommended this framework is because Risk IT complements topic which Samsung is looking into together with ITIL, as well as Risk IT is more focused on building the risk scenario, how the risk will happen. And I suggest that Samsung implement this throughout Samsung uniform. So this is a framework with the risk governance, evaluation, as well as the risk response. So for the risk governance is the management level, the governance level of the manager of the IT risk. So it's actually to maintain a common view on and to maintain standard risk register to provide a risk update in business term, as well as to make the risk informed decision. So for the evaluation is basically to collect data and to analyze the risk. So to collect data is to conduct risk scenario, how the risk might happen, and the risk and the analyzed risk is to define the likelihood of the impact and the likelihood of the risk from happening, as well as to maintain a risk register. And for risk response is how Samsung will react to the risk and how they will manage and react to the risk. And furthermore, I will also recommend Samsung to adopt the automated risk management platform, which for example the RSAGRC Archer. And this platform allows Samsung to manage all IT related risks in one single platform, so as to increase Samsung efficiency in managing IT related risk, since they are a gigantic company. Third goal, I'll be talking about how stakeholders are kept informed of all aspects of change. Stakeholders are people who are affected by this change. So one company which I found was BC Hydro, which is a Canada company. They actually formed a group of change management practitioner to develop a change management framework. So this framework ensures that the stakeholder will always be informed and that the stakeholder have a way to get more information about the change as well as to gather feedback from the stakeholder. So BC Hydro implemented several principles in their framework. And basically all these principles is to ensure that communication is always there and that the stakeholder will always be informed of all the change. And success factor which BC Hydro decided is involvement is to identify who are the stakeholder who is impacted by the change, as well as to give opportunity for the stakeholder to participate in the change process. And as well as to have a continuous communication is another success factor, is to develop a communication plan so that there's a way for the BC Hydro and the stakeholder to communicate effectively with one another and to keep them informed of all change at all phase, as well as to gather feedback. It's very important to monitor the effectiveness of the communication plan. If it's not effective, there will be a need to change it. So for my proposal to Samsung will actually be very similar to BC Hydro, which is to follow some principles, which is like explain what to them the change, reason for the change. The communication must be two-way. The stakeholder must be able to communicate to Samsung about the change, and the stakeholder must also be actively engaged and consulted so that they will all be informed in all the change aspect. And it's also important for Samsung to understand the success factor of meeting the process goal, which is the involvement, involving the stakeholder in the change process, as well as continuous communication. Ensures that communication will always be between the company of Samsung and the stakeholder. I've come to the end of my presentation.
Alright, hi, my name is Brandon and I'm going to talk about the IT related goal, which is to manage IT related business risk. So how does another company manage this goal? So we are using Microsoft as an example for this one. So first step is to identify risk. So this provides the opportunities, indicators, and information that allows you to raise major risks before they adversely affect the business. So the second step is to analyze and prioritize risks according to the probability, impact, and exposure. So these elements enable staff members to rank risks accordingly as well. So the third step is to plan and schedule risk actions. So the planning involves developing detailed strategies and actions for each of the top risks, prioritizing risk actions, and developing an integrated risk management plan. So for the scheduling, it is involving the integration of the necessary tasks in order to implement the risk action plans into day-to-day operations by allocating them to staff members in order to track the statuses. And then we are able to track risk, which is basically to gather information about how risks change and basically monitor them. And then we have the control risk, which is to carry out activities related to the contingency plans, because this is where triggers have reached. So according to the risk tracking data, corrective actions are initiated based according to it as well. And we are to learn from risk, which is a continuous activity throughout the entire process and may begin at any time. So how are we going to propose to achieve this goal? So firstly, we have the processes, which will consist of risk identification, risk evaluation, risk mitigation, and contingency plan. So these are the steps that have been previously explained. And then we have the roles and responsibilities, who are the executive team, who are able to identify IT-related risks and mitigate actions according to it. The management board, who are to ensure that the risk management process works efficiently. And then we have the audit committee, who are to provision the advice on a strategic process for risk control and governance, and a statement on internal control. And we have the corporate governance, who are to ensure that the risk management policy is kept updated. So now we have the advantage, which that it is able to reduce possibility of large losses for Samsung, because we are going to mitigate risk and prevent risk from problems from occurring in the first place. So with that, we are able to help to reduce the possibility of Samsung losing out in terms of maybe financial losses, etc. And for the disadvantages is that kind of limits the amount of gains that can be acquired to provide high quality services to customers, because we are too afraid of taking risk. So with that, we're not able to find new resources, etc. And then now we are moving on to process related goal, which is the IT problems are resolved so they do not reoccur. So discipline zero plan. How does another company manage this goal? So with that, before a team is assembled to address the problem, it is first necessary to plan the approach. So this is basically about who is going to be on the team, what the time frame is, and what resources are required to address the problem. So then we can then build a team. We need to have the necessary skills for the team members, and they need to have the necessary time as well and energy to commit in the problem solving process. And with that, we are able to describe the problem and be able to specify who, what, where, why, how, and how many, and use different techniques such as problem, definition, process, in order to ensure that the team members are focusing on the right problem. And that we are then able to implement a temporary fix once we figure out the problem. So then after that, we can then move on to identify and eliminate the root cause, which is to conduct a cause and effect analysis to identify the likely causes of the problem. Then we can then verify the solution and ensure that it is tested thoroughly to ensure that it's working properly and efficiently. And with that, we can then implement a permanent solution with that, and monitor it to make sure that it's continuing to work properly and be efficient. And after that, we can then prevent the problem from recurring and gather the team together to focus and discuss and identify how the problem can be prevented from recurring in the future. And then lastly, we can then celebrate the team's success and conduct a post-implementation review to analyze whether the solution is working accordingly and improve where necessary. So for the processes, it's going to be with the example that I've just stated, which will be Ford Motors, and with that, the roles and responsibility, we will have the executive sponsor, who is going to be ultimately responsible for fixing the problem, and then we have a team leader who is able to coordinate the entire process, and then we must have an AD expert who knows the 8 disciplines well and is able to guide the team through the different disciplines using the appropriate quality tools at each phase. And then we need to have a subject matter expert in regards to the problem, and then supporting members who have experienced the problems before. So yeah. Now we have the advantages, which is it is an easy and logical method, clearly showing the next step of problem resolution. And then it also improves the quality of the services provided by the Samsung online website. For the disadvantages, it requires staff training in the AD problem solving process so that they know how to interact with it. And then it also requires appropriate data collection and analysis tools, including process maps. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.